AutoLine After Hours is brought to you by Alex Partners, when it really matters.
All right. Thank you, Alex Partners, for sponsoring the show. Gary, good to see you here.
Good to see you. We were gone for Thanksgiving last week.
Yeah, but we're back in the saddle.
Man, it seems like it was such a long time ago since
look, this whole year, it's like, isn't this April still? I can't believe we're in December. Hey, we got to tell everybody who we got here. Warren Browne, forecaster extraordinaire, I'll say, and Adam Bernard, product savant, maybe is the way I'll. And we got so much to get into today. You got something you want to kick the show off with?
Okay, so I want to give you guys a quiz here, which is different. It's not something that happened. This is not that happened in history. And so Warren, he teaches at Lawrence Technological University. So this is turnabout fair play. So if your students are watching, they're probably like, yeah. All right. So this is something that is just happened. Okay. So it's contemporary. So the Association of Scottish Motoring Writers gave an award to the best family car. Okay. So the Association of Scottish Motoring Writers. Now, what do you think they named as the best family car for 2025?
Oh, there's got to be a joke in here someplace.
No, this is real. This is real. I mean,
I'm sure it's real, but
I just find it astonishing. Okay.
Okay. For an astonishing answer, the Ineos Grenadier.
It's a good guess, but no,
too far off.
Because it's Scottish, I'll go with some Defender version of Land Rover.
It's another good answer. Also wrong. John?
I have no idea.
Okay, and I will give you the answer, and I have no idea what this vehicle is. It is the Jayco 7. Jaecoo 7.
It's a
Chinese.
It's a cherry.
It's called something else in China, but Jayco and Omoda are the two brands they launch with in Europe.
So, I mean, isn't that astonishing? That, of the vehicles that you mentioned, you'd think, that's a natural thing. But a Chinese vehicle,
They weren't shilling for the Brits, is that what you're
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, it goes to the point of the penetration
Of the Chinese.
the Chinese, and arguably the bona fides of that vehicle in order to beat out things like the Ineos and the Defender.
See, we automatically went up market Brit, the whole thing.
True.
But,
Right.
It may be more that answer may be more telling about the future of the British auto industry than anything.
Oh no,
else.
European auto industry.
Yeah.
Not just the
The
British.
Chinese are slowly climbing up there.
I wouldn't say slowly. They're
I know they're really, really big in England.
They're very big in England. They're rocketing up the charts in terms of market share.
So I mean, okay, if we just say, okay, they're doing well, obviously, in their home market. I mean, comparatively speaking, right? Well, in Europe, South America,
Right.
Specifically Chile and Brazil.
Apparently, they're making moves into Africa.
Yep.
And Middle East.
So, like, if we take Antarctica out, what does that leave?
Greenland.
U.S. and Canada.
Yeah, Greenland.
Canada.
Yeah.
And they're in Australia too. Don't forget that.
So how long?
That's what you get, Gary, when you have 25 million units of excess capacity, most of which is gasoline, and you need to feed the Africans, South Americans, Central Americans, Central Europeans with affordable vehicles.
And especially when you cannot make money in your home market, and you can price these things higher overseas and maybe make some money.
Yeah.
So
these cars are not as cheap in Europe as people think they are. A $10,000 BYD in China is like $20,000 in Europe.
Price to the market.
Yes.
Price to the market.
Yes.
Right.
But not the bargain basement thing that everyone was afraid of.
Yeah.
It's still 20.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean,
20
Yes.
is
It's still competitively priced.
Correct.
Definitely. And it's a very competitive vehicle.
Right. But anyway, enough of the Chinese.
that's the Chinese.
Yeah.
great quiz as always.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good one. Yeah, because I never knew that. Adam, one of the things you wanted to talk about is this rush into the hardcore 4x4 off-road market. And it seems like everybody must have woken up to this about 3 years ago because all these products are coming to the market right now. But what are your observations on this?
Well, I know, during COVID, there was lots of stories about RV sales going through the roof and empty lots and things like that, and people needing to get away. And I don't have any market research to support this, but I'm wondering if that's kind of a leftover feeling. And, Nissan is bringing back the Xterra, body on frame architecture. Audi might be building a vehicle off the Scout platform. BMW is supposed to be working on something. Hyundai showed the Crater concept, which was an off-road SUV at the Los Angeles Auto Show. So I don't know if it's kind of a form of escapism. And the fact that gasoline is still relatively affordable in the US compared to the rest of the world suggests that, people are a little less concerned about a blocky, non-aerodynamic, heavier vehicle in order to have a little sense of adventure. But everyone seems to be dabbling in one form or another.
Yeah, well, look, Jeep had it forever, right? And they had it to themselves. I kept saying this on the show years ago. I can't believe the rest of the industry is letting Jeep get away with it. And then Ford woke up to it, came out with the Bronco. It's doing terrific for them, really. And that must have awakened everyone else to, wait, what's going on in this off-road space? But my question to you is it going to grow the segment, or is it just going to slice the pie thinner?
So I had been looking at some numbers that when the Bronco came out, there was a decline in Wrangler sales. But if you look at net Bronco plus Wrangler, it was an increase in the size of the market. Now, there may be a practical limit to how much stuff you can throw out there. I think it helps Nissan that Xterra is somewhat of a known brand, and there's a little cult of followers out there with it. And Scout arguably is trying to do the same thing. If you go on to bring a trailer and look at some of the numbers for vintage Scouts, those values are starting to climb. So I think they're trying to bank on that as they come to market. For a company like Hyundai, it may be a little more challenging because they don't have any off-road credibility. They've done rally cars, which go off-road, and they could try to leverage that into convincing people that, yeah, you can go everywhere a Jeep can go in this Hyundai. Maybe a bit of an uphill battle for them.
But to what extent do you think the Xterra is coming back? Because it's a name that people recognize, so cheaper to market because you've already got that out there.
Yes.
B, it's body on frame. I'm sure they got a lot of Titan frames sitting around somewhere that they haven't used that they can put it to work.
Well, they've talked about a new body and frame architecture that they're developing, and it's supposed to be electrified, so some sort of hybrid. And they even hinted that the Pathfinder could go body on frame for the next generation, which I think would be a bit of a strategic misstep if you take Pathfinder out of the BFI, front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive family SUV market and then make it a rugged three-row off-roader. You lose fuel efficiency, you lose interior package efficiency, you gain some fun, but you may lose some families in the process. So I'm not sure if they're going to go down that road, but they apparently Nissan's CEO is doing a lot of new stuff. And so this sounds like part of it.
Sounds like a tribute to the 4Runner.
Yep. And 4Runner is still doing great, I think, market-wise.
Land Cruiser.
And Land Cruiser.
Yeah.
All right.
I think there'll be two classes, by the way. The status class. Scout is in that status class. And the mainstream, Wrangler, Bronco, Xterra, BMW and Audi, we can go off. Honey, we could go off-road if we needed to.
There's the
Lexus. We spent $1,000 for the extra for the paint job.
Yeah, the Lexus LX70. I mean, it's the same thing. You can go off-road, but would you?
Yes.
They'll end up being two classes, status.
And maybe even a third, because I would say there's going to be the poseurs that are going to have the painted tow hooks and the big wheels and everything, but that's about it. They're not going to be really off-road. They're just going to have that look, and people like that look.
Of course.
All right. So
for some people.
So to your point, I have some stats here that underline that in a huge way. So this is Strategic Vision did a survey in 2022. So this is, within the COVID period, right? I mean, it's fairly, so 98% of SUV and crossover buyers and 70% of truck owners go off-road only once a year or less. Right. 91% of SUV crossover buyers only drive on dirt or gravel once a year or not at all. So it sounds like this is all show and very little go.
Probably. I'd be curious to see the numbers for Wrangler and Bronco. I think if you do get a real body on frame capable vehicle,
I agree.
Probably a little higher. And like the Xterra, you'd see a little more. But yeah, something like a Traverse Z71 or a Santa Fe XRT, those numbers are probably right in line.
Yeah, right. But I to follow up on what you just said there, Ford Raptor. I'll bet
Yep.
those people are going
Yep.
off-road with those things. So, but you have to have the street credibility, right? There are plenty of people who will buy a vehicle that has unbelievable off-road capabilities, and they're never going to use it. But in their mind, they've got the vehicle that could. So come the zombie apocalypse,
Right.
you know, they got the get out of town car.
They look different at church in the parking lot.
Yes.
you can call those out.
Well, and there's that whole psychological aspect of saying, hey, you know, if the zombies do come,
Yep.
I'll be able to drive over that hill, no problem.
Yeah. But, you know, I see this development akin to the midsize pickup segment. There's been so many other players that have come in and more yet to come in. Ram's going to do a midsize pickup, for example. Hyundai's doing something else that's going to be bigger than the Santa Cruz, excuse me. And it's grown the segment some, but I don't think the newer players are getting the volume they thought they would.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, the Ram, there was a lot of speculation this new Ram truck was going to be off of the Stella Large architecture. It was going to be BFI, street truck kind of deal. And then Stellantis just confirmed it's going to be body on frame. So it's now going to have off-road capability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's going into the Jeep plant. So if I were them, I bet it's going to be awfully similar to
Gladiator?
Gladiator, exactly.
I think I like Adam's point about the COVID thing. I think that influenced it, but you're a little closer in that an SUV is an SUV is an SUV. It's a box. Okay, the differentiation between, if you take Ford Bronco out, the differentiation between a Traverse and an Explorer and all of these is not that great. So think of it as a way to finesse distinction, to finesse something that's differentiated from just everybody else because it's an SUV. I mean, it's just like a four-door sedan. It's a car, okay? But if you get, a high horsepower RT Charger or whatever, well, that's different than just the regular Charger that's on the street. So there's a history of finesse that I think is happening there too.
So, but to your point, Adam, I mean, so at what point are there too many of these alternatives out there that it comes to the point where the volumes are just too low? I mean, you can have this, all these Xterra fanboys, like, damn it, we can't wait till that thing comes out, and they'll buy them,
right?
And they'll enjoy them, they'll have fun. But how long is that string
10 years ago, you probably could have asked how fragmented can the SUV market get? And I think it's probably now more fragmented than any of us anticipated between body on frame and BFI and like SUV coupes, which was not a thing 10 years ago. So, I think automakers are getting smarter in terms of modular architectures and manufacturing flexibility and able to make money with smaller volumes to an extent. But yeah, there's probably a risk of a saturation at some point, especially if it's a brand that's trying to establish itself versus a brand that's already got some heritage and reputation there.
So Warren, since we've seen you last on the show, you've come out with another of your analysis of the industry, the impacts of tariffs and whatnot, and you came out with what I will call the line of the year, which is asset with no realistic economic purpose, and that is applied to some plants that you see. So tell us what the landscape looks like.
Well, the ones that I called impaired assets, or they're on impaired asset watch, okay, are plants that don't exist today. They're not in the capacity utilization situation today. They are plants that are either got the girders up, the land cleared out. In the case of VinFast, a promise made, okay, but there are 6 plants out there that don't exist today, that were done under the guise of the world is going a little more electric than maybe what the market was going to do. And they have spent $15 billion, $12 to $15 billion of plants that don't exist yet. They're not making one unit, but over the 27, 28, they will add 1 million units to capacity. They don't have the volume to support $12 to $15 billion worth of investment. Okay, and what I've not seen is Ford on Blue Oval, Rivian on Georgia, Scout on South Carolina, come out and say, you know, we said we were going to spend 4, but we're really going to spend 2. Now that all of this was the marvelous opportunity for them to do this. For them to do this 6 months from today and say, you know, we've reevaluated the whole thing. I believe, I know enough about the internal workings of General Motors, maybe not others. They've already evaluated it. Ford's already evaluated Blue Oval. And they're not, $5 billion will not pencil. Even with gas versions, it wouldn't pencil. So, yeah, that's why I put them on the impaired asset watch, because if you just take a look at the capacity, 1 million, and you cut that in half, meaning you cut the capital expenditure in half at the same time, even though in the case of Blue Oval, that investment's pretty well along the way, right? And probably for Scout as well, maybe not so much for Rivian. If you cut the capacity in half and you filled it at 100%, still doesn't pencil.
Still not enough volume to make money, is what you're saying.
No.
Well, so you project that next year prices will go up 4.6%, and as a consequence of that, the vehicle sales will decline by 3.5% to 15.6.
In fact, I think you sent us a chart on that. I can probably bring that up. You have a multi-year scenario, and you show that sales and production, because of the tariffs, and U.S. automotive manufacturing employment going down because of the tariffs.
Correct.
Now, you also compare this to what you call your, I think it was a pre-COVID baseline, or
no, when the Inflation Reduction Act came out, there were all kinds of changes relative to what GDP growth was expected to be, what prices were expected to be, what incentives were expected to be to alter the transaction price. Okay, and it was compounded or enhanced, I would say, by, you could get $7,500 off on every lease vehicle. So to think that those $7,500 were only applied to just the 18 vehicles that qualified, no, it applied to every vehicle that was going to be leased, and you could work that into the leasing agreement. So there was some growth in the market, and the two things that have been removed are the incentives, meaning shareholders will now have to pay. The government's not going to pay anymore for that $7,500
for an EV.
For an EV, the shareholder will have to pay. And two, in the initial phases, I was shocked that prices didn't go up this year above 2%. I was shocked because my approach was, if tariffs are going to go up by 15, let's just call it that. Some have gone up by 25, they haven't come down yet, but 15, that there's not enough margin across the board to absorb all of that. There isn't. Okay, when the supplier has to pay and pass that along to General Motors or to Ford or anybody else, there isn't enough margin. I thought prices were actually going to rise by 5 to 6% this year, 2025.
Yeah, didn't happen.
Did not happen.
They absorbed it.
Because they absorbed it. Okay,
but they paid for that on their bottom lines.
And there's talk now that prices will start to climb.
I believe so. Look,
I think it's been delayed.
Right. Yeah. Nobody wants to come out with the Trump administration, the president himself, breathing down their neck and said, look, we had to raise prices because of tariffs. He's going to cut their head off. So they've been loath to raise prices. And I agree with you. They're finding some offsets, and the administration's done a number of things. You don't have to pay ZEV credits going forward. For example, you're not going to face these CAFE fines going forward. In fact, we're going to give you a tariff rebate, 3.75% of the American content on any car that you've got. So they're finding some amount of offsets to the tariffs themselves.
Right.
But even so, these offsets don't make up for everything.
Well, the thing I teach at LTU is that ultimately the consumer will pay those tariffs, and you can get it into the 50s or the hundreds of studies that have proven that to be true. The exceptions to the rule are that the market is so big that the supplier and the distribution channel and the manufacturer will absorb that increase because they want to hold the market. General Motors doesn't want to let the market go before the Chinese get here.
Right.
So they're going to absorb, but after a while, after quarterly earnings, I see a big write-off in the fourth quarter of 2025 to writing all that stuff off. But ultimately, you're going to have to increase price if you want to get back to margins. And here's the key that I wrote in my report. If you want to get back to margins that are going to sustain investment. This is an investment intensive, as you well know, Adam, an intensive investment industry. You're spending $5 to $6 billion a year.
So what sort of margins do they need to
be healthy? 10%.
Yeah.
And now they've got to find money to reinvest in internal combustion. Now that that's hot again,
while they're writing off the EV stuff.
Exactly. Now that's Porsche has $3.5 billion to rejigger their plans, and every other automaker now is trying to find the money to put back into ICE.
Right, but don't forget they have raised prices. They haven't not raised MSRPs, but they've raised destination charges. They've taken away all kinds of incentives. So even though the MSRP hasn't changed that much, the actual transaction price. That's what we got to look at.
Well, of course, but that's also influenced by mix.
Correct.
Right.
Absolutely right.
So I want to make 3 points.
Yeah.
Capacity is not required. And ultimately, they'll have to come out and say that. Okay. Or do something different. Did Scout make the right move in doing EREVs rather than BEVs? Yes, they did.
But will people buy them?
Well, I think that they'll buy the Ram, but irrespective, 1 million units of capacity by the end of 2028 that does not exist today. And capacity utilization this year will be close to 80%. Wow. And the volume is going down.
Right.
And now we're adding 1 million units. That isn't needed. And two, I just think that
they're going to be making cool new vehicles, though. So, of course, those plants will be churning things
Rivian
out
hasn't
like
made
mad.
a nickel since they've opened.
Right.
They're at 15.
They don't need another plant.
They're at 15 stock price.
They don't need another plant. Ford doesn't need Blue Oval. VinFast, we'll see what happens with them. But I think Scout, Audi needs U.S. manufacturing. And so supposedly Audi's going to get a version of the Scout. I wouldn't be surprised down the line it gets more than just a version of the Scout if the Scout doesn't sell.
Well, once you've built the plant, they will do what they can to fill it. But, if let's assume that Audi does a Scout version, and I believe that they will, it's going to be a $70,000 vehicle. We know what the market segment demand is for $70,000 vehicles. It's not that good because people are screaming for $35,000 vehicles, right? So there's excess capacity. And then we have there are some plants that have been saved. Belvedere, saved.
Right.
Okay. Because the volume for the midsize pickup wasn't going to satisfy the UAW.
But remember, one of the things that saved Belvedere is that Brampton is getting its head cut off.
The Compass is going into Belvedere.
And the Cherokee.
Yes, right. But what's going into Brampton? Because that's where they were supposed to go.
Maybe an SUV.
But what I'm getting at is it's a game of musical chairs here, right? So even though you say Belvedere is saved, Brampton is screwed.
Yeah. Well, as is some Mexican.
Yeah.
Compass. Excess capacity closed. Nissan's second plant in Mexico closed. Ingersoll closed. Brampton. Bramlea, depends on whichever you pronounce it. Those are 4 or 5 plants.
Right.
Who says that I know this is going to be a shocker, and I'm the Grinch that stole Christmas today. But what's to say the Chinese don't sell one of those plants or buy one of those plants from the Canadian government?
Yeah, look, I talked to the Canadian.
They got
Consul
workers
General
they need to hire
this summer about just that. And would you guys consider turning to the Chinese, because the Trump administration has slammed the door shut on you guys? And his word was, we don't want to play that card yet.
Yeah.
So they're clearly thinking about it.
What about Compass in Mexico? Mercedes is leaving. Nissan has left. It's a plant that's got a beautiful paint shop, probably a paint shop that can produce 150,000 vehicles. Chinese are about to get, I think, a 50% tariff on imports, which will hurt General Motors, by the way, because they import a lot of Chinese vehicles into Mexico. Okay,
so they import them to Mexico to sell them in Mexico.
Correct. From China to Mexico. 100,000
Chevrolets.
100,000 Chevrolets are Chinese in Mexico. That's a shocker to a lot of people, right?
Some South Korean.
Yes, but the point is, if you put that on, the Chinese have manufacturing experience in Mexico, even though it's on a small scale, just like Toyota started, right? So you can't ignore the fact that if you put 50% duty on import to Chinese, and that is a market ripe for a $25,000 to $30,000 vehicle, buy Compass. And, you won't be able to export it to the U.S.? That's fine. We'll build it at Compass. And with all the free trade agreements that Mexico has with other countries, we'll ship them down to South America and Central America and to Cuba and everywhere else that needs those vehicles. That's a strategic play that could happen.
Yeah. Okay, but let's take the Chinese in Mexico out of the equation. Let's take the Chinese in Canada out of the equation. Okay, so it seems to me that the numbers that you're showing sort of indicate that there's going to be blood on the streets here.
Of course.
So talk about that.
Well, the scenario where there isn't blood on the street, and let's say the blood not on Main Street, but blood on Wall Street, okay, is a continual absorption of all of those tariffs. That Toyota, General Motors, Ford, Stellantis say, look, we're just going to eat them. And rather than having 3.2 billion of earnings every quarter, we're going to have $1 billion earnings every quarter. And we're going to ride that horse until the end of 2028. Because we're not going to give up one single piece of market share. And we're going to hold that production and take it and make Wall Street and the shareholders pay. That is a scenario. That's not the one that I wrote about in my report. My report says that prices will go up by 4.6% next year. MSRP, meaning the menu price, which every manufacturer is always reluctant to change. They'll change incentives, they'll change destination charges, they'll change interest financing. But boy, when that menu price gets changed, irrespective of what the president says, it never goes down. Not the menu price. So if the menu price goes up by 4.6%, yes, there will be a reduction in demand, and there'll be a reduction in production. And when you have a reduction in production, you have a reduction in employment. And so my scenario is...
You have a reduction in employment, you have a reduction in the number of people who can buy vehicles.
Correct. So the scenario that I wrote in my report is a shareholders get relief scenario, right? It is, because the margins will be back. The volume will still be a little less because the prices go up, right? So you have this issue. Who's going to pay? I keep it fairly simple. Shareholders or the union? But one of those pains will happen when you have tariffs that are 5 times. Remember, tariffs were 2.5%. Everybody thought that was okay. Okay. Was China cheating? Yes. Should China tariffs be higher than 2.5%? Absolutely. Canada? So you went from 2.5 to 15. And still for the USMCA, it's 25. You have to work that into price. Okay. I can't envision a scenario where General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis and Toyota continue to eat those duties at the expense of future investment. I just can't. And that's the summary of my report.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. And this is a perfect time for us to take a quick commercial break for our sponsor. We'll be back to talk about a whole lot more that's going on in the industry just this week.
We help businesses respond decisively to their most critical challenges, from urgent performance improvement to enterprise-wide transformation. We work across the full value chain in automotive and in industrials, helping clients navigate disruption, drive innovation, and unlock sustainable growth. Alex Partners, when it really matters.
Welcome back, and thank you again, Alex Partners, for your support on the show. So, Gary, big news yesterday in the White House. President Trump eviscerating Biden's fuel economy standards. What do you make of it all?
So it just so happens that Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy had a op-ed in today's Detroit Free Press. Wonder why it was in the Detroit Free Press. And so I will read you a couple of quotes from this, which sort of makes me wonder, and I think you'll see where I'm going with this. So this is a quote. Lowering mileage standards will support President Trump's crusade to revive the beating heart of American manufacturing, our auto industry. The sector was once the pinnacle of American might and ingenuity. This initiative is going to let the automakers build the innovative cars of the future that families want, guaranteeing new jobs and more long-term investments in the heartland. So I would like you guys to explain to me how automakers are going to build the innovative cars of the future when basically it seems that what they're going to be doing is just going back to internal combustion engines. And viewers of this show know that I've been more critical of EVs than anybody sitting in either of these two chairs.
Right. Yeah, well, look, that's just a politician saying stuff that makes his boss look good.
Right, but so I look to see what the standards are in terms of fuel economy in China, in the European Union. Now, of course, they have different tests than we do. I mean, we have CAFE.
There's different gas prices.
So it's calculated differently, but basically, it comes down to the MPG equivalent. Okay, for 2025 passenger cars in EU right now, 60.2. The China, 60.2. In the US, in 2031, it was supposed to be 50.4. So here's my question. How are we going to have the cars of the future? How are we going to have innovative cars when the rest of the world is kicking our ass when it comes to technology that allows them to get that kind of fuel efficiency?
Can I want to go?
I mean, the first thing that pops into my head is, with so many people complaining about the price of gas, if the U.S.-based automakers decide that they don't want to build fuel-efficient vehicles anymore, and I don't know if they're going to do that or not, but because competitors outside the U.S. are still building those kind of vehicles, and they'll be able to claim a fuel economy advantage, and so a lower operating cost advantage that consumers are going to file appealing. I mean, when the Japanese first came in here, they touted their fuel economy advantage, and that was before there were any kind of rules in place. And it turns out a lot of people want fuel-efficient vehicles. So, I think Bob Luss used to say that, regulating fuel economy was like regulating the size of clothing. And so, you can go too far, but I don't think that removing the fuel economy regulations is suddenly going to create amazing cars of the future.
No.
Can I be the silver lining guy here?
Okay, let's hear it.
Listeners of the show know that I'm not the silver lining guy ever. Let's take a couple of things. I applaud the level of deregulation that is happening here, including the fact that the United States is no longer divided between we're going to follow California and we're going to do everybody else. That manufacturing complexity was drastically understated. Today we're building vehicles for Oklahoma. Well, boss, we don't have the parts for Oklahoma. Well, we don't need any more cars going to California. What do? Well, stop working. I mean, that complexity was incredible. So the removal of that, even though it's not yet finally approved, okay, I think is significant. That deregulation is significant. The very fact that you don't have to meet those standards, you don't necessarily have to have stop-start. You don't have to have the world's best air conditioning to get the GHG credits or whatever they call them. I think that that's fantastic. Summary to that is they're letting the market decide what vehicles are going to be built. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. Unless you don't build the ones that customers want. That now is on the CEO, always has been on the CEO, but more and more on the CEO. What are we going to build sedans? Well, boss, nobody buys them. Well, but now we got to build sedans because Trump thinks we're going to build sedans. Well, that's stupid too.
Except for one thing, I was reading Joe White's post that High-Speed Rodeo just earlier today, and he made a really good point. CAFE was skewed to favor trucks, SUVs and trucks.
Sure.
So you didn't want to do even a compact sedan, because if you did a compact, quote unquote, truck, a crossover, that was easier from a fuel economy standpoint. So he was postulating that maybe getting rid of this thing, we're going to see the U.S. manufacturers go, you know what? It does make sense for us to start looking at building sedans again.
Could, but Gary loves these. Let's do a data check. Toyota didn't get out of the car business.
But it sells on a global basis.
All right. Here's some data that is going to go between what you both of you are saying. So I've got a Corolla hybrid sitting out there right now, a sedan, a hybrid sedan. Okay.
50 miles to the gallon.
Here's the numbers: city 53, highway 46, combined 50. Okay. Now, basically, what I heard the argument coming out of the White House yesterday is, it's impossible to do this. This is completely unaffordable. It's a $30,000 car. Now, I was thinking of some other numbers. Now, unlike, I've never been much of a fan of the Bolt, because the Bolt, I thought, was a small car, and we're not supposed to like small cars. Okay. So I looked at the dimensions of the Bolt. It's got a wheelbase of 102.4 inches. It's 163.2 inches long, 69.5 inches wide, and 63.4 inches high. My Corolla has a wheelbase of 106.3 inches, a length of 182.3 inches, 20 inches longer than the Bolt. All of its dimensions are bigger. Now, do you think that by 2031 that Toyota is not going to be able to have a Camry that is going to get 53 miles per gallon?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Right.
I don't doubt it.
So my point is that don't car companies that aren't Toyota long look to the future thinking companies need a kick in the ass that may be standards? I don't know if it's his first name. I can't read. It starts with an H. Samuelson, who runs Volvo. Hakan. Okay. So he said yesterday that basically, if there were not regulations, there'd be no catalytic converters in cars, nor would there be seatbelts.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
So we're against those things?
No, but look, starting even before the Biden administration, I think it's arguable that the Willy Wonka contraption that was built by the EPA to get people to buy electric vehicles was overreach.
Couldn't agree more.
You're hard to make the argument, even unless you're the ultimate tree hugger. I'm sure that somebody could contradict me, but that complexity was incredible, and it drove a level of, I'm going to stick my neck out, lying by CEOs saying that we're going to get there when they knew they weren't. Okay, so eliminating that Biden complexity, and now Trump eliminating some of that regulations relative to CAFE and CO2, I don't see anything wrong with.
Yeah, but here's the problem for the industry. At some point, the Democrats will come back into power.
Yes.
And what are they going to do? They're going to ratchet those regs right back up to where they were in the first place.
And then you're going,
oh, yeah, I do. Maybe there'll be a little bit more sanity in the standards. I hope too. But what's likely is it's going to be another knee-jerk reaction, as we've been seeing here from administration to administration. The industry is yanked this way and then that way. And so all I'm saying is that if I were running a car company, I'd be mighty careful what I do, anticipating. I'm not making a prediction as to when the Democrats will come back in, but they will. And you better be ready. And you better be ready in a way that you're not going to have to spend tens of billions of dollars to try to catch up again.
Let's take your valid argument one step further. Going back to my study, not to harp on it, then you got to make your money and your margin now.
Yes.
Yep. Now.
Make hay while the sun's shining, right?
To eat all of those tariffs at the expense of future investment for this industry, whether it be a supplier or an OEM, puts you out now to where you're not making $3 billion a quarter, you're making $1.9 billion a quarter, and then you get out and the Democrats come in and go, oh, here's all the new expenses that you're going to have. You're already in the ditch now. And so that was some of the thinking that went behind. Take your margin now and increase price, even if it means you've got to reduce production. Wasn't that the code word during COVID? We're never going to go back to giving the stuff away.
Okay, but what comes, 5 years from now, what's the technology that is going to be offered by the domestic manufacturers as it competes with European manufacturers and Asian manufacturers?
Is there a limit on Chinese vehicles coming to the United States?
Probably
Yes.
still, yeah.
Yes.
And you will have an incremental improvement in technology from today.
So basically you're saying then that BMWs won't have better powertrain technology 5 years from now than Cadillac or Lincoln will have.
Is Europe going to change the standard for 2035?
But 2035 standard was 0.
Right.
Right.
I'm trying to respond to your question.
Yeah.
You tell me what the European standard is, I'll tell you how good BMW is.
No, but I'm talking 5 years from now. So 2030.
No, BMW is as relentless of improving their gasoline and diesel engines. Not necessarily for the United States.
Toyota.
Yeah,
So is Honda.
absolutely.
Right? And that's what I'm worried about. It's just like
The market will decide.
All of this is to make it easy now, okay?
Right. But it's not making it easy now because everything's planned 4 to 5 years in advance. So stuff in 2028 is like kind of done. Right. And so, to assume that I'm going to remove the fuel economy standards and all of a sudden prices are going to drop $1,000. That's not the way things work.
No.
It was a good show, though.
Yeah.
It was good TV.
Yeah.
Well, the name of the program is, this is capitalized, Freedom means affordable cars. Yeah. Freedom doesn't mean affordable cars. Freedom means that there are car companies
free to choose.
Yeah. And the thing of it is that I don't understand it is that the aforementioned Honda and Toyota and Kia and Hyundai are making affordable cars.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're making a lot of them, most of them here.
And to your point, there are levers that can be pulled right now to affect vehicle affordability, as opposed to raising prices 5% next year.
Correct.
That doesn't have anything to do with fuel economy. So,
no, look, I think to me, Joe's piece in what happened yesterday, semi-kabuki theater, okay, was the deregulation aspect of it. If you want to have stop-start if you want to have turbo, if you want to have, in order to make smaller displacements to get better fuel economy, if you want to have improved air conditioning, you decide that as a manufacturer on how you're going to go to market to compete against everybody else. The government's not going to tell you how to do that. I think that that's fantastic. Now, I will conclude by saying it also has its risks. If you're not competitive, even with the Chinese not being here, if you can't keep pace with Hyundai and Honda and Toyota, who are very strong competitors with manufacturing facilities in the United States and have been for quite some time, and you start to only make $1.5 billion because you're eating all of those tariffs, when is the time where you say, we can't make it anymore? Will you give us another handout?
Well, that's not going to happen. The American public will never bail out the American auto industry again. That's my prediction, and I think it's an easy one.
So you make your money now. I guess it's the summary of my study. Make it now. If you don't raise your prices by 4.6%, you're telling Wall Street you're eating them, because that's what it takes to come clean.
So to go back to yesterday and then to go back to your report, does yesterday change anything from what you're seeing for next year?
I think the level of engineering complexity gets changed. Yes, depending upon what you want to go to market with. But I don't believe for one single minute, it's never been the case of the 40 years I worked at General Motors, that purchasing came in with a cost reduction and the first thing finance said, let's pass that on to the consumer. That is not an equation that Albert Einstein could solve.
And you could argue that an automaker would look at a given car line, and here's the portfolio of engines we have, and they could decide with these new fuel economy regulations, you know what, we don't really need the entry level basic technology 4-cylinder engine anymore, and we're only going to offer the upmarket high powered engines. And so you still have vehicles that are less affordable because they have the more powerful engines under the hood. So again, it flies right in the face of what they're trying to do.
I think the Trump regs will have some improvement factor. It's just not going to be as ambitious as the Biden one was. But if I were an automaker, keeping in mind that the Democrats are going to come back in someday, I would jigger my fleet to beat whatever the new CAFE standard is and brag about that every year. Hey, we beat it. Anticipating that when...
The lawyers would like it.
Anticipating that when the Democrats come back in, at least you're viewed as somebody who was trying to do, in their eyes, the right thing.
I totally agree. But to me, I totally agree. Up for debate. Trump leaves office. Do you think the tariffs will go down?
No.
Okay, that's one particular set of structural change that I also agree will not go away. Do you think that the new USMCA agreement will lower that duty between the three countries to less than 5% after it's redone?
Not less than 5%, no.
Okay, so there'll be a further separation of Mexico and Canada from...
But it'll probably below 15%, because right now you can bring in stuff from Japan and England and the like, cheaper than you can bring in cars via the USMCA.
Yeah. So you agree that those are two structural changes that probably are not going to be drastically modified even post-Trump administration. Now I want to take you out to the election, Gary.
I'm listening.
And the Democrats have a lead because now they've taken back the Senate or the House, whichever one you believe is going to happen, or maybe they don't at all. But the Democratic candidate stands up in front of the UAW and says, I'm putting those regulations back to where they were. We're going to go back to CAFE, and we're going to go back to CO2 emissions because it's the right thing to do. And we're going to go back to 12 states versus 36 states, right? Because it's the right thing to do. And the manufacturers go, well, yeah, if you're going to do that, just like Mary said today, then we're going to have to close some plants. And we would have had to close plants if those new Trump regulations weren't in place. And the UAW is going to get right behind that Democratic candidate.
Right. But
I don't believe post-Trump that there's going to be much change at all.
No, you're right. So, but the union is one plank of the Democratic Party, right? And then you're going to have the environmental plank, which I would argue is far more powerful in the party right now. And they're going to say climate change is an existential crisis, and we're going to have to put their feet back to the fire. That's what I think is going to happen. And you're right. The union will scream bloody murder, but right now, I don't think, especially with the UAW, and who knows what's going to happen with Sean Fain. There's a lot of dissatisfaction within the union with him. Who knows where it's going? He's going to come out in the next contract, start demanding pensions, and he might even go for a jobs bank again. But what I'm getting at is I just don't think the union has the same clout as the environmental movement.
I can't debate that. Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
So it'll be a huge argument within the party.
Money. They may have more money.
Yeah.
The environment. Well,
all right. I want to segue away from this political thing and sort of underline my point of I think it's all about the technology that matters in terms of what consumers are going to buy. And to Adam's point of you don't want to use the 4 because the 6 is going to get you a better margin. But so today at the Automotive Press Association, Consumer Reports came out with their 2026 overall brand report card rankings for the second year in a row. And for the third time in 5 years, BMW's a runner-up. Subaru is number 1. Porsche, Honda, Toyota, Lexus, Lincoln, Hyundai, Acura, and Tesla. So in those names that I just read, what stands out?
Lincoln,
right?
Yeah.
The rest of them were?
Well, Tesla's domestic, but the others were all foreign.
Good point. So Lincoln, the highest rated domestic brand, it climbed 17 positions to the number 7 spot, which I thought was
And this is reliability or what?
Or is it overall brand report card.
Vehicle scoring plus
all right,
reliability.
So the annual auto reliability survey, which covers 20 problem areas: engine, electric motors, transmission, and car electronics, and more. So the data from that has Toyota as the most reliable brand.
Mm-hmm.
No surprise.
Yeah. So Adam, how did you guys inside General Motors look at the Consumer Reports thing as not something that you wanted to do well on, but rather did it reflect the reality of what you guys saw?
I think so. I know there were folks that worked on, understanding how Consumer Reports does the testing, because there are a lot of people that look at, rely 100% on Consumer Reports to get, what car should I buy? So I think there was working with the consumers union to understand, how they score vehicles. And, there was an effort to make sure that, the products that they were being developed were going to score well. In terms of the, understanding the reliability measures and stuff, I know there's been always a lot of controversy over how they rate reliability. But I think it's definitely seen as a tool to get people to have a positive view of the brand.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an interesting one. So in quoting from them, this goes to the Auto Reliability Survey. Buick, as usual, ranks highest among them, coming in 8th overall. Good for Buick. Okay. Only the Enclave has a below average reliability.
And that's the brand new Enclave.
It's
yeah, but what's the other story there, Adam?
Well, so Buick has 4 products right now, right? It has the Enclave, which is built in Lansing, Michigan, down the street here. And then it has the
Envision out of China.
Envision out of Shanghai.
Invista.
The Encore and the Invista
out of
South Korea. So the only one that has the problems is the one that's built here.
That's the other.
Yep. See, and this gets back to my concern about what's going on. It's just like we need to have the best technology in the world here, not elsewhere.
Right.
And that concerns me.
Although I'm curious where the problems with the Enclave are, whether they are, because I know a lot of the stuff you see is issues around all the electronics and navigation, whatever, or if it's powertrain related, which is what all the fuel economy rules were kind of tied to. If there's engine problems, then that's an issue.
Look, I think that domestic manufacturers, let's just pick on the Detroit 3. domestic manufacturers, and I know there's recalls, so I'm going to put that aside in my head. The SUVs and the mid-size pickup trucks are as good as any vehicle in the globe. They are. Detroit just doesn't make cars, right? They rely upon smaller SUVs to fill that niche that was once in passenger cars. Whether they come back or not, I don't know. But I think the innovation and the technology of the Detroit 3 is okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. There's no really bad.
No, the new Equinox.
But there's not bad, but it isn't as good.
Yeah.
Is my point, and that's the concern. Okay, so going back to sedans, how many Camrys are sold every year?
250,000.
250,000. Okay. So
used to be 450,000.
Right.
And the Camry is largely a North American only product, so it's not quite as global as like a Corolla.
Right.
So they're obviously able to sell lots of them here, and yet some brands have said, "Sorry, we're out of it."
Right. So here you have a full line manufacturer, so they make soup to nuts, right?
Don't make as many Tundras as they would like to, but yes,
right.
soup to nuts.
But yeah, so their trucks have, with the exception of the Tacoma, which continues to dominate in the midsize segment for trucks. I mean, but they've got everything. They're making everything, and yet they're kicking the asses of Detroit. Okay, so
once you tell your chief engineers that the way that we're going to meet that standard is with electric vehicles, you're going to stop working on those smaller footprint vehicles that require a higher standard. Just natural. We're going EVs. Stop working on those cars, because EVs are zero, and those cars raise the bar on what we have to meet. That was the change, Gary.
So what executives at any of these companies are being penalized for making the wrong move?
If the government says your standard's 54.5, and you think that the world's going to be EVs because Europe's going EVs and China's got a bunch of EVs, you go EVs. I don't know how you get out of that. I don't know that was necessarily a bad decision to go EVs. You were getting $7,500. You were getting jillions.
The law said you had to.
But you were also getting incentives. You were getting the carrot.
Yeah. No, there was a carrot, but
not just a condition. You were getting the carrot.
You were getting a carrot, but that was not nearly enough to cover their investment costs.
Well, they're giving you money to build battery packs.
Yeah, battery plants.
But I want to take a step back, because the market has a say in what it thinks are the best vehicles out there. And if you look at the U.S. market this year, I believe only 5 manufacturers have gained market share. General Motors, number 1. I want to say Toyota and Hyundai and Ford Motor Company, the only ones to gain market share this year. There might be somebody else in there, but Honda's losing market share. Mazda, Subaru, Nissan, big time. The Germans have. BMW, I think, has held its own. But what I'm getting at is the market has a say. The market's making decisions here, and the two true domestics here are the ones that, one of them gained more market share than anyone this year.
Without cars.
Without cars, right.
Right. So it's and as long as the General Motors is doing, 2.8 million vehicles in the United States, selling them without cars, and they continue along that path, and they need that margin. Remember, they need that margin. Let's go back to cars, where the margin is half of what it is on a Traverse or on a Tahoe. Gary, that's tough sledding inside when you're doing that financial analysis.
I thought it was very interesting. I don't know if you guys saw it yesterday when Ford came out with its numbers, that it had its top sales guy put out a blog piece. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see it.
No. So this was all about affordability and how Ford has been at the leading edge of paying attention to affordability. And they used for an example that the base model Maverick hybrid sales increased 74%.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal vehicle.
The base model, 74%. And then the base model of the Ranger went up 40-some%. And I think the base model of the Explorer went up 60%. Okay. And it occurred to me that if we think about what has happened in the auto industry over the last 5 years, that basically you don't want to sell the base level of anything, right? You want the platinum.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't want the XLT.
Plains.
You want the platinum. And so suddenly they're saying, no. It's we know that this is what the market wants. This is what consumers want. They want the affordable one. Can these guys make money on the affordable ones?
They will make less money.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
For sure.
They
absolutely.
make money on accessories because a lot of the automakers are building up their accessories. They're building up their accessories portfolio, and so you can customize, personalize your entry-level Maverick without getting it all.
But it comes back to what Warren, you said earlier. They can't give up market share. The market's not growing. In fact, your numbers show the market is going to shrink for the next few years.
Correct.
And so market share has always been important, right? Now it's going to be critically important, because if your market is not growing, how do you possibly grow your company? We've hit up against the ceiling of how far you can go with raising your prices. That's what the lever that they've been using over the last 5 years. Just keep raising prices and your top line grows. Well, now the consumer is going, no, I want the base one. And you better be ready to sell those, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to maintain your market share.
So maybe Slate will be successful, Warren.
Slate?
Yeah, roll windows.
The cheap truck.
Yeah. Look, they look. I'll give them this. They don't have a paint shop.
Yes.
No,
They don't have a body shop.
No.
Right.
Quick question from the
Okay.
viewer that came in earlier related to Slate. Tyler Moser asked, did Trump just kill Slate with the K car?
Oh.
No.
Yeah, look, we got to wrap this thing up, but yeah, K cars are not going to sell well. They're a little niche thing in the U.S.
Somebody in Japan whispered in his ear, and now he comes back as a car expert.
Right.
No, look, they've done a couple of things on their structural cost that's good, but they have capacity of 150,000. Maybe they need 50. And maybe they need to run that at one shift for a while until they build up the volume.
Yeah. Depends on how much they charge for the SUV kit to make it a really usable entry-level vehicle.
Every manufacturer, I'll close with this. Every manufacturer came out with a vision or any other pontification about electric vehicles was betting on that $7,500. And the elimination of the $7,500, the elimination of the incentives to do batteries and manufacturing, put those plants that we talked about earlier today totally at risk, and put the pricing at risk. The shareholders are not going to eat $7,500 a vehicle in order to keep some of those vehicles sustained. Although, if you want a EV9 right now, Hyundai's prepared to give you 11 grand. Ooh.
Yeah.
11.
Yeah. Man.
So maybe some will be more aggressive than the others. No, the elimination of the Inflation Reduction Act and the One Big Beautiful Bill changed the structure of the industry for the balance of the decade. No question.
Yep. And on that note, we do have to wrap up. But Warren Browne, great having you here. Adam Bernard, awesome to have you. And Gary, we'll do another show next week.
We will indeed.
I want to thank all of you for having tuned in.
AutoLine After Hours is brought to you by Alex Partners, when it really matters.